Where this is recording. Hello everyone, where this is recording. This is a video for all of my seekers about how to read tarot, and I literally just went live. So we're going to give it a few minutes and wait for some folks to show up. I've got YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. And once we have some folks here, I'll jump right in. I'm going to real quick open up this live stream in a different tab. Only because, for whatever reason, sometimes it doesn't like to show me people in the Facebook live stream. On my page, I have to put it on a different page. People in the Facebook live stream. Here we go. On my page, I have to put it on a different page. There we go. Hey, Maureen, nice to see you. Yeah, see, it's only showing me that on one page, not the other, so cool. I'm going to keep it up here. Hi, Iara. I'm just responding to a comment on YouTube real quick. Hello, Artie. Hey, Cloud Throughout Wicca. Nice to see you. Hi, Sarah. Give me just a minute here. I'm trying to respond to someone on YouTube about something. Give it a couple more minutes for some more folks to show up. Hello, Olivia. Nice to see you too. And Michelle Hallett. We have all kinds of people showing up. Let's see. All right. I'm going to give this like 3 more minutes with everyone to make sure that we've got all the folks that want to be here before I jump in too far. Hopefully everyone's, oh, hey, Jessica, nice to see you. Hopefully everyone's last week since we did this last has been pretty good. I've been super busy just trying to keep up with my artwork, and I'm trying to develop some stuff for Beltane, which I'm going to talk a little bit more at my next live stream. I know that, hopefully you guys can't hear my children freaking out in the background. Hey, Katie, nice to see you. Where was I? Oh, next week I'm going to talk a bit more about Beltane and ideas for rituals that can be done solitary. I think Beltane is kind of a tough holiday to do on your own and not in a group with all the social distancing stuff. So I was going to do a video on that because I imagine that a lot of people are going to be thinking about that thing very, very soon. All right, 2 more minutes and then I'll jump in. I know there's a little bit of a delay on Facebook, so it might seem like a little longer for those folks. Not sure. It's weird because I can see myself in real time on YouTube and Instagram, but Facebook is like 3 to 5 seconds behind. It's really weird. So, all right. So for the folks that are already in the room, do any of you, hey Freedom, nice to see you. Do any of you read tarot already? Possibly? Wondering what you guys are maybe hoping to get out of this and what types of things you might be looking for me to talk about today. Oh, thanks, Jessica. I did it special for you guys this morning. Because this is the first time I've done my hair and makeup since I did this last week. I guess while I'm waiting another couple minutes, I'll show you guys the decks that I'm using right now because I decided to have them handy. Not that I think I'm going to need them. I bought this deck in Orlando. Yes, for many years, but self-taught. I was self-taught at first too, Katie. Still primarily self-taught, absolutely, but I took some classes and what have you that really helped a lot, and now I teach it in turn to help help people learn the things that I had a hard time learning on my own, especially. So this deck I have here, this is called the Tarot Apocalypsis. I bought this in Orlando. Jessica Caribbean Queen on Instagram says that she's been learning about the symbolism of tarot cards, but it's complicated. Hey Cosmo Yuri, and hey Kroiki, yes, it is definitely can seem very, very complicated, especially when you're new. I'll talk a little bit more about that after, but for sure, the more you do it and the more you study about it, the deeper into your psyche it kind of sinks in, the easier it is to learn and have kind of a symbolism vocabulary to kind of draw from in your own mind. All right, there's enough people here for sure, and it's a couple minutes past where I was talking about waiting. Anyway, so I'm actually going to get started. I am going to talk a little bit first about the history of tarot because I think that's kind of helpful. Michelle says that she's a beginner in tarot and own a deck and is very interested in learning more. Cool. Well, that's what we're all here for. So let's roll in. I want to talk about history real quick. First thing, nobody is really 100% sure about where tarot came from, mostly because what it started as is very different as the way we use it today. Tarot we're fairly certain historically, in the beginning was used as a game, almost like, I don't know, I might be dating myself a little bit, but when I was younger, and I was in school, we used to have this little game that we would play that was called MASH. And the whole idea was to figure out, like, who you'd get married to and what kind of car you'd have, what kind of house you'd live in, and things like that. So in the beginning, it was kind of used like that, and it was really recreational, and it was not in any way taken seriously in the way that people kind of use tarot now. That game was likely was first it's first talked about, at least that we can see back in historical records, in the 1300s. So it kind of goes back that far, but it wasn't used the way it is today until like the mid 1400s. And that was mostly in Italy and in France, actually. And of course, the oldest known tarot deck that's still in circulation that you can still find printings of is called the Tarot de Marseille, which is French, of course. And other than that, there are three other sort of, am I right? Three? Yeah, three other main decks that all the other decks of tarot that we all kind of use now are all sort of based on. And that's the Thoth Tarot, which is by Aleister Crowley. Oh, my computer's doing. Maureen over here says that she loved MASH. Lots of people did. Hey, Boomin. Ugh, I can talk. Babe Boomin, nice to see you. Hi to everybody. I didn't do a ton of MASH, but I definitely remember doing it, Maureen. It was definitely a lot of fun. So the three main decks that all the current decks have sort of been based on ever since is the Thoth deck by Aleister Crowley. Ooh, Instagram was paused. I'm going to give that a second. Okay. The other one is the Rider-Waite Tarot, which is what most people are familiar with and what most decks their imagery is based on, although obviously not exclusively. And then the third one is the one called the Bota Tarot, which were all created in the 1890s. The other thing, there's a couple of things I normally talk about tarot classes. The one thing I do want to point out real quickly, some quick fact checking, if you were. Tarot, those are all the things that tarot kind of is that we're sure of. Things that tarot is not and did not come from. Tarot was not originated by gypsies, and it is not inherently Egyptian. I could go into more detail, but just take it from me that those things are completely false. Tarot is actually a relatively modern system. But of course, it's grown to such popularity that it has become a very serious sort of system of divination. In my mind, I don't think that makes a difference whether it's ancient or modern or anything like that. I feel like there has been so much energy and mental energy poured into it over the years that makes it just as powerful as anything else that's really already out there. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, because I don't want to bore you guys with history terribly, I want to talk a little bit about tarot and symbolism. So Michelle over here was talking about interested in learning more. People were talking about how the symbolism, and Jessica was talking about how the symbolism is really challenging. And it's interesting because tarot is entirely a language of symbol, which is why some people believe it. Some people erroneously believed that it came from Egypt because they had hieroglyphics, which were also sort of a system of imagery used for communication or language in a way. And until you kind of have a good idea of what that symbolism is, it can seem daunting to learn. However, the cool thing about tarot is that it's built around a system. Oop, and Instagram has paused yet again. So we're going to pause yet again. I'm going to talk a little bit about archetypes. Instagram keeps freezing on me here and there. So the cool thing about the symbolism of tarot is that it's really intended and designed to be very universal. So if you are a human being living on the planet, having a normal everyday existence, there's a good chance that a lot of that symbolism might not be nearly as complicated as it might seem up front. It can seem really scary because there are so many cards that you feel like you need to like memorize the meaning of. Obviously, the more you do it, the easier it gets. But kind of having, like I said, that vocabulary of symbolism to start with can really be a big help. Hey, Larissa, nice to see you. So what is an archetype? I use that word. Let me tell you what an archetype is. If you're not familiar with the term archetype, it comes from the study of myth or mythology. And an archetype is defined as a common situation that is a recurrent character or collection of character traits that is experienced by all human beings. Hey, Johnny. Nice to see you. So that's kind of obviously a really big upside because, again, the idea is that everybody's experienced it. So everybody can draw on that kind of pool of experience to discern what the different symbols mean. Some kind of interesting examples. And of course, I'm slightly disorganized. I think most people that are in these rooms are probably familiar with, modern fantasy storytelling, Star Wars, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings. And without realizing it, you may or may not realize that a lot of those, hold on, I'm just trying to track this down. Those stories have a lot of the archetype. I don't have it here, but that's okay. I know it off the top of my head. And Instagram was paused anyway. So, all right, Instagram is back. Hey, Lessons in Flare Jeans, which is a fantastic username. We were just talking about archetypes, and I was explaining how archetypes, while it sounds like a big scary word if you've never heard it before, is actually a common situation or character or collection of traits that is experienced by all human beings. And if you are a normal person who watches things like Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, etc., you probably already know what a lot of those archetypes are. No, not right now. I love you. For example, no, not right now. Sorry, one of my smallest witchlings is trying to get involved. I love you, guys. I cannot talk while I'm doing this. For example, I think a lot of people have pointed out how similar like Dumbledore is and Gandalf is. That's because those are both the same archetype, an archetype that is called the wise old man or the wizard. Another common archetype, which you see in a lot of mythology, is the trickster. And a lot of you may have heard of trickster, contrary energy. In The Wizard of Oz, that's an example in one of my books here. I'm using it for my reference because I know it, but having it in front of me helps me not, screw up my words. The wizard is considered to be the trickster in Lord of the Rings, Saruman. Who would I say the trickster is in Harry Potter? I would make an argument for Peter Pettigrew, but that's just me. I'm a huge Harry Potter nerd, so I won't get into that too much. Thank you very much, Lessons in Flared Hair. This is a very faded, luscious lavender from Splat, and I curled it special for all you guys today. There's others. The Great Mother, Darkness, the hero. Obviously, the hero is obvious. You get Harry Potter or Frodo or not Han Solo. Gosh, Luke Skywalker. I know Star Wars. I swear, nobody jumped down my throat. So those are good examples. And the other thing too. So going back to the idea of symbolism and being overwhelmed by symbolism, a very important thing to remember, and this is true of anything in magic, not just tarot, but also in working with stones, working with herbs, working with oils. Always, always, always the things that you intuitively glean out of an image or a symbol is always going to be more potent and more powerful for you than the usual, associations given. Hey, Altered Consciously, and hi, Avi. I know that's not your username, but I know who you are. So nice to see you. We're just talking about archetypes and using our intuition for discerning symbolism within the imagery of tarot. Just a reminder for everyone who's in here, because I didn't get to say it yet, real quick as an aside, if you are here in the room, pretty please give me a hashtag live, because it will help other people on the internet find us today if this is something that they want to watch. So anyway, using your own intuitively gleaned symbols, the things that you see that pop out at you, and what those things mean to you is really the most important thing that you can extract from a reading to pass on either to yourself if you're reading for yourself or for another person. Thank you, Altered Consciously. Real quick, I want to talk about the fact that people talk about the idea of fortune telling. I want to just really quickly kind of squash that idea that you can do fortune telling or predicting the future with tarot, because that's not really how it works. That's not really what it's designed for. And what I describe to people, because obviously in some situations it can kind of give you suggestions or ideas about what could happen in the future, but it's not really going to tell you these are the lottery numbers tomorrow or you're going to die in 3.5 weeks, whatever. Doesn't really work that way. What I explain to my students and people who ask, anybody, that tarot is a tool, a psychological tool for self-reflection. What we do within our day-to-day lives, what we're looking at through a very narrow window of perception, like tiny. And when you're looking through that teeny tiny hole of perception, it can be extremely difficult to make a good decision because you can't see everything that's going on in a situation. And what tarot does is it takes that tiny window of perception and blasts it wide open so that you can see everything that decision or that situation has going on, so you can make a sound decision based on all of the factors. Obviously, some tarot readings, every reading, most readings or layouts have an outcome card, and that last card, can obviously give you some impressions of, hey, Wild Sister, nice to see you. That last outcome card can give you some idea of what could happen in the future. But it is very much a suggestion. It is very much it basically says, if things continue going on the same path that you've set for yourself and you don't change anything, this is what could happen. But the cool thing about life in general is that we all have free will. So you can absolutely change that. If you don't like something that you see in there and you go, ooh, that's not what I want to get out of this at all, you can, from that point, branch off of that sort of set of possibilities and create a whole different reality for yourself. So you should never take anything that you see in a tarot reading as hard, fast, absolutely going to happen. Not the way it works. So is it fortune telling? Not really. However, like I said, great psychological tool for self-reflection and kind of seeing the big picture of what's going on so you can make a good decision for what's going to be best for you in your life. All right. So first thing, so now I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about some of the symbols that are in tarot and how you can kind of jack those overall overarching symbols and concepts to help you determine what the meaning of a card is, even if you're internally freaking out going, oh, I don't remember what this one means. You can kind of use this as a springboard to kind of help you get to where you're trying to get in a reading. So the first thing I want to talk about is numbers. Yes, absolutely. Also consciously open your eyes more to what's presently going on. That's exactly what I was trying to say. So first thing is that every card, yes, every decision changes your future and you can always change it. Numbers. So every card in your deck is associated with a number, at least. So the major, so there's two different types of cards in the deck. There's the major arcana and the minor arcana, and I'm terrible at numbers, ironically. So I don't remember exactly how many of each there are, but not that there's 22 majors, and then there must be 56 minors, something like that. The point is the majors all are numbered, so they go from 0 to 21. Right? Yeah. Like I said, me and numbers, kind of funny sometimes. Like I know the cards, but sometimes I get those numbers confused in my brain. So every card has a number, and every digit has a meaning. I swear I had this somewhere. I'm trying to figure out why I don't. You know what, everybody? I know some of this. I'm just going to look it up while I'm chatting. So if I'm not making eye contact with any of these screens, don't hate me. So all of those major cards, some of them are double digits. And in order to kind of determine the numerological meaning of a card, you have to take any 2-digit and you need to decrease it down into a single digit. And if anyone isn't familiar with numerology, it's the idea of like 22 is a really great example. The way that you take 22 and you turn it into a single digit is you add 2 and 2 and you get 4. So 22 vibrates to the energy of 4. Or 21, 2 plus 1 would vibrate to the energy of 3, so on and so forth. So when you're talking about the numbers, of course, this is my husband's computer. When you're talking about numbers, so the number 0, or the absence of number 0, is always about having a fresh start, something new, something exciting happening, also potential. The idea of having a cup or a vessel to be filled. 0 is the Fool card, so it's the card of like infinite possibility if anything could happen. And then, of course, 1 is new beginnings also. Usually, it can also be a new idea or the start of something new, even more so than the 0. 0 is sort of like the absence of the potential, and then the 1 is actually like the spark or the burst that starts something. And then 2s have to do with duality. Like, for example, the 2 of Swords. Swords having to do with the intellect a lot. They are often has to do with decision making because you have 2 thoughts. So you're weighing a decision. Here we go. So 3s are usually celebration, not always, because the 3 of Swords is not so positive of a card. But it can also represent a delay in a situation, something that is kind of on the back burner, kind of happening, but real slow. Like 4 is stability. 5 has to do with change. In most of the minor cards, you will find that the 5s tend to sort of be the flip side of the suit, like the negative aspect of that suit that you're working with. So if Swords, I mentioned, is, the intellect and thoughts and often sometimes strife, the 5 of Swords is actually takes sort of a positive spin on that, or a negative spin, depending on which things you're talking about. Maybe a better example might be the 4 of Pentacles. So Pentacles are associated with earth and finances and job and security. And when you have the number 4, which is also associated with, oh, that's right, I was talking about 5s, but I'll finish this anyway. When you put the number 4 with Pentacles, both of which have to do with stability and security, it's almost like too much of a good thing. And you can kind of look at it that way with some of the other numbers and suits and the way they work together too. But the 5 is where I was going with that, is because the Swords are sort of a not super positive suit sometimes. And the 5 is sometimes not a super positive number to come up with. When you put them together, it makes it a little bit more positive, as opposed to with the 4 of Pentacles, it kind of does the opposite. But 5s, change, adaptation. 6s have to do with idealism and problem solving. It usually represents the ability to kind of move past the issues that you found with the 5s. And then with the 7s, usually has to do with some sort of, hey, School of Magic, nice to see you. I've been seeing all of your posts. Hopefully you're getting plenty of teachers, because I know that's what you're looking for. So with, where was I? 7. So 7 is sometimes represent a decision that needs to be made. Also, usually references a sort of untapped or unexpected resource. Again, depending on the specific card or the specific suit when you're talking about minors. 8s have to do with money, power, success. I tend to also associate 7s and sometimes 8s with wisdom and knowledge also. And then The eights, this says here, sometimes associated with being the most difficult aspect of a suit, like the most difficult lesson within that suit that needs to be learned. Nines are usually endings, like the ending of a cycle, but it's not actually a 10. So, it's not like the end, but sort of like when you're curving over the end into, sliding into home base. That's a good analogy. So things are almost done. Um, Revelations, kind of, coming out with all the lessons that you were supposed to get out of a situation. And then a tens, of course, are completion, karmic completion, learning the lesson of a suit and moving on to something too. Um, and then I have something here about quartz cards. I'm not going to go into too much detail with those. We only have so much time. But real quick, I will mention that when you're dealing with face cards, if those come up for you in a reading, they can be either a person or what I call a process. So pages, in the traditional Rider-Waite decks anyway, you get pages, knights, queens, and kings. So pages are often depicted, although not always, as female. So they often represent a young feminine type person, although not exclusively female. We're not trying to jump into the gender binary here or anything, but usually someone who's very youthful. They often represent a gift or an opportunity, again, depending on the suit that they're being associated with. Knights are often, again, young and male. They tend to be think of it sort of like teenager, adolescent, angsty type energy. As a person, and as a process, they often represent travel or a movement. Or the idea of, I kind of associate it with the idea of like the teenager who's just graduating high school, thinking about going off to college. That kind of energy of like, I've reached a level of mastery of knowledge and now I'm ready to go out and get more in some way, shape, or form. Again, the suit is going to influence it a little bit. Queens are obviously adult female. They're obviously a very nurturing sort of energy. And then kings are the adult male energy, and any of these, the queens can often represent like a female figure, like the mother, or grandmother. Whereas the king might be a father or grandfather or uncle or something like that, if you're talking about a person. And as far as how can you tell if it's a person or a process, you really have to look at the cards that are around it, and kind of figure out in context what it looks like and what it feels like to you intuitively. Because that's, like I said, the most important thing is following your intuition. So another thing I'll talk about real quick is the idea of general symbolism. I talked about numbers, and I mentioned archetypes. Symbols in general throughout history have always, been a really big thing in magic and myth and all of those things. And once you start reading into them, you can really learn a lot and kind of, like I said, develop that vocabulary of symbolism kind of in your brain. If you're looking for a quick start guide, it's funny, I have this book, but I don't own the I own the book, but I don't own the deck that goes with it. This is the Robin Wood Tarot deck book, and I love it because it has a lot of really great information here about the artwork and the symbolism that's in it, which is why I bought it actually. And I usually give a version of this to my students. There is an entire chapter in here that's common symbols. I'll read a few that you might see a lot. And there's a lot of let me see. In a lot of the major arcanas, you'll find white flowers. So example, white represents purity, brilliance, lightness, clarity, newness, like an empty canvas. So again, that idea of potential, because you'll find big examples in my brain, you'll get a white flower often in the Fool card, which is, again, the 0 card or the first card or last, depending on who you're talking to, card of the major arcana. And then you also see it a lot in the Death card, which is sort of interesting. So again, white having to do with newness, again, it has to do with the idea of the cyclical idea of life and lessons, how as something ends, something new is, right around the corner. And flowers have to do with joy, frivolity, and celebration. So when you're talking about, the Fool having a flower in it, it could be the celebration of the excitement of this new thing happening. When you're talking about death, you're probably looking at something to do with again, still celebrating, but the joy of something coming to an end so that something new can come out of it. Because while that seems, I think we can all agree if you've had the death card come out in a reading that you've either, that has been to do with you, that it can seem kind of scary because you're like, ooh, like, what is that about? Like, things are getting shaken up. Things are kind of scary right now. So in the moment, it seems really scary, but it's actually really great because usually what it means is that you're just at the edge of things starting to get better and rolling over into something new. So if you're looking for some cool general symbolism, this is a great book. Another great one, which this is actually part of my husband's library, so I inherited it, so to speak. This book is called The Ultimate Guide to Rider-Waite. It's really great because it breaks down the symbolism in every single card. Like, it's super cool. I'm going to hold it up over here. I have a delay, so I can't see if people can see this. Let's see. There we go. Highly recommended. So there is that. So if you're looking for more information on general symbols, if you start studying, or if you're really into like dream dictionaries, like those are a really great source to find general symbolism. Also, I cannot recommend highly enough because symbolism and mythology to me go absolutely hand in hand. Studying mythologies, I think, can really be a big help. You could, someone's literally messaging me. My mother-in-law is messaging me to ask me if I'm interested in toilet paper. I'm going to tell her yes real quick. There is that. All right. Where was I? So, learning about mythology. I'm going to tell her yes real quick. Ooh, hold on. All right. Oh gosh. Where was I? Okay. I was listening to my voice on a delay, so I had to fix that real quick because I accidentally navigated away. All right, so I was talking about mythology. Learning about mythology, I would highly recommend, if you've not heard of Joseph Campbell and the Power of Myth, great series to listen to if you can find it on tape, cassette tape, I mean, or if you can find versions of it on YouTube. Maybe I've never looked for it, but you might be able to find it there. Or even, I know this is outdated maybe again, but your local library, which is where I got it from the very first time, I listened to it. So another great source, and this is another plug for another YouTube channel, is Crash Course Mythology. Highly recommended. It's really great, very palatable, short videos, and it kind of walks you through a lot of the common themes that are in mythology that are really, really fantastic, with little animations and really easy to understand and really entertaining, and go check it out. So now I want to talk about a little bit about, because I'm kind of rounding into the end here, choosing a deck. I showed you a little bit my Tarot Apocalypsis deck. And then I also have I have at least one other one over here I can show maybe after, but not big priority item. How do you choose a deck? There is some ideas out there and, superstitions, I guess we could say, that, hold on, this same person is still trying to message me about this toilet paper. There's a bigger one if you want to share with someone. I love you. I'm live streaming right now, so please be somewhere else. Sure, okay, live right now. Like, ugh. All right. So, I love you. Okay, so choosing a deck. The idea that you need to, there's this superstition that you need to be given, streaming live, can't chat. There's this idea that you need to be given your deck, and that unless you're given a deck, it is not proper that you to use it. I'm here to tell you and give you permission to buy your own deck. That is bullshit. That if you see a deck that you like, you should buy it. But that said, the very first deck that I ever got was a gift, which is kind of what inspired me to start reading. Because up until then, I was utterly overwhelmed at the idea of learning how to do this, because I was like, too much memorization, I can't handle it. But I'm here to tell you that if I can do it, I think you can do it. So most people choose their deck, though, by looking at the artwork and going to probably Barnes and Noble and thinking, saying, "Ooh, that one's pretty. I think I'll buy that." And that is a perfectly valid way to do it. Absolutely. There's no point in buying a deck that, you don't resonate with, that you can't appreciate the imagery of. If you are first learning and you're like, I don't know if I'm qualified to even do that. I always tell people that, if you're first learning, a great deck to start with is the Rider-Waite Tarot. Again, because so many decks have their imagery based on the Rider-Waite symbolism. It can be really great jumping off point for yourself. There are lots of varieties of that. You'll find the Rider deck, the Waite deck, the Rider-Waite Radiant deck. There's a lot of versions thereof. They're all more or less the same, but that can be a good place to start if you're not sure. Like I said, I've got the Tarot Apocalypsis deck. I love this deck because it actually has a lot to do with mythology. And I kind of said earlier, I love myth, and I think the archetype of myth in the imagery really plays together really nicely, and it kind of makes things make more sense to me to look at it from that perspective. Another deck that I have, I bought this like a little less than a year and a half ago, and used it really heavily for a while. Actually, maybe some more like 2 years and change. Well, either way, the other deck I've been working with pretty regularly for the last 6 months is the Herb Crafters Tarot. I got this at Connecticut Pagan Pride. This deck, a lot of people, if you follow any of the tarot meme pages, because there's a lot of really funny ones out there, they kind of imply frequently that tarot cards are kind of jerks. And the truth is that they kind of, not that they're jerks, but that they don't sugarcoat things. They tend to be very blunt in their messages. And I find that Herb Crafter Tarot is much softer. It tends to, kind of put a nice fuzzy warm blanket on things and make it seem not quite so scary. Oh, thank you, Altered Consciously. This is what the book looks like, Herb Crafters Tarot, if anybody's interested in checking that out. My Apocalypsis deck is just sort of loose. Oh, this is a good one. Here's the Temperance card. Look, it's an alchemist. Very cool. So you get the idea, but love, love, love. So in this Apocalypsis deck, each suit actually is associated with a different mythology. So like the suit of swords is Norse, Germanic, Teutonic mythology. The suit of cups is Greco-Roman. The suit of wands is Egyptian, and the suit of pentacles is like Tibetan, I believe, or something like that. It's Asian. I don't want to, say the wrong thing and get that wrong, but it's something like that. And I love that personally. So it helps me learn not only more about the tarot imagery, but also about the myth that's behind the imagery that the artist chose, which is really cool. So once you have chosen a deck, the next thing, what do I think about a regular deck of cards? Sarah asked. Oh yes, Jessica Caribbean says she needs them. Yes, they're beautiful. Highly recommend Apocalypsis if you're talking about that one. Either way, if you DM me after, I can send you the Amazon link to make sure you have the right one, because I'll totally forget between now and then otherwise. Sarah asked about what do I think about doing it with a regular deck of cards. You can absolutely do that. In fact, I mentioned in passing earlier gypsies, and gypsies are actually much better known for palmistry rather than card reading, but when they did use cards, they used regular playing cards also. So the main difference between using a playing card deck and a tarot deck is that the playing cards do not have the major arcana in them. But other than that, you can more or less read it the same way, because each suit has, an ace to a 10, and then a jack, two jacks, one jack, and a queen and a king. So you don't have a page. You're missing that too, technically. But otherwise, you can read it the same way. So I believe hearts is cups, spades is swords, clubs is wands, and then diamonds is pentacles. My husband's whispering answers to me over here, thankfully. So you can absolutely use playing cards the same way. So especially if you're stuck in quarantine and you're broke and you can't afford to buy yourself a deck of cards, that could totally be an option for you. So once you have your deck of cards ready, you have to, hey, Chia Seed Witch, nice to have you here. I actually have a set of witches runes. Well, my husband has a set of witches runes. They're not actually mine. I think those ones that your sister gave you are witches runes. I have no idea how to use those. I haven't gotten around to figuring that out yet, but they are beautiful. They're made on like antler and they're painted in shades of blue. Super pretty. So once you have your deck, the next thing you want to do is you want to consecrate it or cleanse it. And there's a few different ways that people do that. The most common way that I love you. Please not hang on me right now, okay? The most common way that people do that is they put it out in the moonlight at the full moon. So you hear about people charging their cards or charging their crystals at the full moon. That's a really common thing that people will do, especially if it's a new deck. Of course, you can pass it through, sage smoke, or whatever other herbs that you like to use, or incense. I prefer actual herbs or resins over like synthetic incense, but that's just me. You loving that purple velvet. She loves your dress.
Why does she keep playing that?
This one. She says she loves your purple velvet dress. Here she is. Okay.
You're my little bitch.
Those are two big common ways. There are other things you can do, but those are the easiest things to do. If you're a Reiki practitioner,
Mama,
you can.
That keep playing?
It's a live feed. It's just on a delay. If you, what was I just saying?
Charging the deck. You went over incense.
I was gonna say something else.
Over moon. Put it with stones.
I'm not sure. Oh, sure. I will talk about stones. My husband just said that. Clicked something in my head. Another thing that you can do. People generally feel like you should cleanse your stones. Hi, Dark Side Moonlight. Nice to have you here. There's a lot of conflicting ideas on whether how often you should cleanse your cards. Some people will tell you should do it at least once a month. You should do it after every reading. You should never let anybody other than you touch them, and not really cleanse them all that often because no one else is touching them. Why bother? There's really not a wrong answer. I'm going to say it again because I said it a gazillion times. Use your intuition. Your mileage may vary. Do what feels right to you. I tend to be of the mind that I like to have my cards cleansed constantly. Basically, I like having people touch my cards because I feel like it helps put their energy into them, for the reading. But the way I store my cards is I keep stones with them that will cleanse them pretty much continuously. And my stone of choice is selenite. This is actually the piece of selenite that was in this bag here with this deck. Selenite is a really cool stone because it does not ever need to be cleansed itself, and I'm lazy, so I like that. The idea is that it actually transmutes negative energy and turns it into positive energy. So I keep these. I have a piece of this with every deck pretty much that I use on a regular basis, especially if it's one that I use to read for other people. But once you have your deck, the next thing becomes, how do I learn how to use it? And the easiest thing to do is to use it regularly. If you're not already in the habit of it, start pulling a card for yourself every day. One card at least every morning. If and when you start to feel a little more comfortable, you can start pulling 3, but start with 1, especially if you're really, really new. And also journal about it. So pull a card. And first thing in the morning, when you pull that card, write it down in your journal. And then go about your day. And at the end of the day, go back to your journal and look at that card, both the physical card and, the journal entry where you wrote it, and think to yourself, okay, how did this card relate to what I went through today? And write about it. And over time, you'll again develop a resource for yourself that helps you develop your own set of associations for the symbolism and the cards that you come across. This works with any divination system, for the record, doing that kind of journaling, but that's a really good place to start. And of course, don't ever be afraid to invest in quick guides or books. One of my absolute favorite books that was a huge influencer for me when I was first learning how to read tarot was The Complete Idiot's Guide to Tarot. And it's spectacular. And also it's got, quick reference guides. There's, this explains, the Celtic cross layout, which is one of the more common layouts. It tells you what each spot is. Really, really great. This also talks about archetypes and what have you. Also, great starter book. And then you can also find cool things like this, quick start guides that, kind of give you a down dirty explanation of every single card. So if you're like, I'm new to tarot, but I want to bring my cards to this party that at this point, it would be a Zoom party. It's a party that my friends are having, and I want to, not have to bring the whole idiot's guide with me. That could be an option too. But I highly, highly, highly encourage you to be brave and not use something like that, and use your intuition, and don't be afraid to let the images pop out at you and interpret based it on that. Like if you pull, let's see, I'm going to pull just a random card. Like this is my top card from my Herb Crafters Tarot. It is the 7 of air. It is eucalyptus. So if I was talking about seven has to do with higher knowledge and wisdom. And when I'm looking at this and it's eucalyptus, when I think of eucalyptus, I think of, hi, Montana Spirit. We're actually wrapping up. I'm just talking about how I would interpret this card intuitively without necessarily knowing the normal meaning of it. It looks like they're distilling something in this picture, but when I think of eucalyptus, I think of the fact that it's used in a lot of treatments in like the wintertime to help improve respiratory health and breathing, and this is also the 7 of air, or swords, which is associated with the element of air. So, I might associate this card with, the idea of breathing easy, of taking, letting an idea that you have kind of simmer, so in breathing and working with it instead of kind of rushing in, and letting yourself consider all of the possibilities in the situation before you jump into anything. And now out of curiosity, I'm going to look up what the book says it means, because I just made that up on the fly and pulled that out of my backside here. 7 of air. So real quick, I know I was just saying 7 of air. I mentioned that the normal suits, I think, are swords, wands, cups, and pentacles. Some decks go out a little bit differently. Like this one uses the elements instead of the suit name. So this is air, fire, water, and earth. But anyway, this is saying that the 7 of air is trust and reason. Don't be swayed by popular opinion. Respond with integrity. Information is key to understanding, which that kind of is talking about the idea of knowledge, I was saying. When your assumptions are challenged, learn more before taking further action, which is really similar to what I was saying. So that's just a really great example. So that said, because that's everything that I have, does anybody have any specific questions for me? Hey, Ernest. We're kind of wrapping up. If you have any specific